Hi, my name is Marco Eres. I was a Rotary Youth Exchange student in 2009, 2010, and I traveled to Alsace, France. And I lived in a little town called Celesta, which is a town of a few thousand people right on the border with Germany. I studied French for 5 or 6 years, but you don't have to do that. You don't have to study for 5 or 6 years to get along. But it definitely helped me because I was able to jump into a French school right away. 2 or 3 days after I flew in, I started school. I was the only American student, only native English speaker in my school of about 3,000. I might have been the only English speaker in the town for all I know. But I was able to jump right in, and it was really thrilling. It was really exciting for me. And right away I decided that I wasn't going to speak any English to anybody, just French. And so I made quick progress, and maybe 2 or 3 months later, my host family came up to me and they said, now that you can speak French, well, sort of, we can tell you how painful it was that first week listening to you try to speak French. I mean, you'd start a sentence and then we'd have to come back 2 or 3 minutes later. So, I mean, even with 5 or 6 years of experience, you're not going to be fluent. You're not going to be able to converse as well as you'd like. So it's a struggle, but that's the exciting part. The food, I still remember the food. It was very, very rich. Everything was with cream, and the weirdest food that I had there was it was a ham, onion, and mustard salad, nothing else. You, I mean, I also had pig's foot and stuff like that, but the food was very good. I lived with 3 host families. The first one was right in the middle of town, and I walked to school. And the second one was up in the mountains. So that was definitely an interesting trip because I'd start the morning biking downhill for about 10 minutes straight from the mountains, and then I'd get to the bus stop. And especially in the winter, my face would be completely frozen. I couldn't talk. And then get on the bus for another 45 minutes. And so that was the start of my day. And then getting back was interesting, especially with a backpack full of books. And that took me 20 to 30 minutes to bike back up the mountains, but it was beautiful. So it was worth it. I biked back up along a river, and there were horses and cows and farms, and it was just like going back 100 years, just a completely different century. And it was a really amazing experience, except when it rained, and then I took a taxi. But and the third family was out in, it was a little closer, it was midway between the two, so it was about 30 minutes, a 30-minute bus ride. And the interesting thing about them is they actually owned the bus company that I took to, they owned the bus company that I rode to school with. So every morning I'd be woken up by the buses and the bus drivers coming and starting their routes. What they tell you when you start your Rotary Youth Exchange is don't go in with expectations. And you kind of say, okay, well, I'll try not to do that. But you don't really have any idea what that means until you get there and see how many expectations you did have, that the culture would be this way, that you could find, I don't know, maybe you could find a certain kind of food that you were used to having at home. A lot of Americans had trouble finding peanut butter. That was a big thing. But I've learned from my exchange experience not to have expectations and to choose something, to set out on an adventure, to set out on a new experience without expectations and just be open to whatever happens. And so that's the way I went into college. And I feel like without the Rotary Youth Exchange, I wouldn't have had the great experience I've had in college so far, which has led me back to Europe. And this summer I spent working on an internship in Berlin. So I feel like I'm coming full circle now, and with a bit more experience, and definitely ready for my next steps as well. So two of the things that I'm most afraid of are deep water and heights, and uh, and so I joined the climbing team, and when I was in France, I also joined a swim team, and so I got to with the sort of spirit of the youth exchange, I got to conquer two of my biggest fears, and not that it's done, but not that I'm not afraid of heights or of deep water anymore, but now I can face them. And that's something that came along with the spirit of youth exchange. And with other experiences, like going off to college, I was much more comfortable, I feel, than most people with that process, with having something completely unknown and just being comfortable knowing that if I rely on my strength and my skill and everything that I've learned, then I'll be fine. And I just need to let go with the moment, and just not worry about it. It's really an unscripted experience. That's the way that I think about it. Because when you go, everything you've done before, high school, middle school, elementary school, everything's been set out for you in steps. You're progressing by steps, and everything's been done before. And so that's not quite as exciting, or you can't learn quite as much there as you could doing something completely unscripted like youth exchange. And I feel like the less structure there is, the more potential you have for growth. So it's something you need. I guess people say real world experience, but I'm not quite sure what that means. But it's something that's it's more like the real world, but it's in a safe environment, and you really get to test yourself, to push your limits, and to discover things about yourself you never thought you'd know, or that you never knew were there. New interests, new strengths, skills, and it's really an incredible experience. You never know what you'll get. But one thing I can guarantee is that you'll gain greater self-confidence, you'll pick up new skills, and you'll have the strength to use them. And if you make it through, then that will definitely happen.